Yeah, so in the Guard, we have everything from KC-135s really all across the country, several C-17 units as well, big ones down in Memphis. We work with those guys a lot. As far as fighters, there's a great unit in New Orleans that one of my good buddies flies for, and then there's F-16s in Miami. That's actually a reserve unit, but there's a Guard unit for F-16s. I believe that's Tulsa, South Dakota, and Wisconsin just converted to F-35s. So when I meet people to, say that I want to go fly fighters, like that's great. Do you want to go active duty? Cool. But there's other routes if you know where you want to live and not have to move every few years. So, and then California has several units with tankers as well off the top of my head. And of course you've got the Phoenix guys flying the 135 as well.
This is the 21.5 Show.
You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
Whether you're a professional pilot or want to be one, you're in the right place.
Let's get started.
Join professional aviators Dylan and Max as they talk their experience in the airlines, business aviation, and more.
Life is good.
Industry experts, unique stories, and plenty of fun. This is the 21.5 Show.
Here we go.
Max, I am so excited for this one. So excited, in fact, that we're doing it twice. We're overcoming technical issues. We have a listener, Ben, is joining us today. Ben wrote in a few months ago and offered to share a little bit of his experience flying in the Air National Guard, and we decided to take him up on it because, one, I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show, and two, I think we both know almost nothing about it, right? Maybe you probably know more than I do. But that's going to stop today because we are going to learn everything there is to know about the Air National Guard from our boy, Ben.
All right, let's get after it.
Ben, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Good to be here.
Okay, Ben. So you wrote in an email. You said, hey, we should chat a little bit about the Air National Guard. You are in the Kansas Air National Guard, and you also fly business aviation with a regular guest of ours, Brooks, at Veris. And so you're very tied into the community here, and you offered to share a little bit about what it's like to be in the Air National Guard. So we'd love to pick your brain. If you could just start off telling us a little bit about sort of your aviation journey and then how you ended up in the Air National Guard.
Yeah, so I started flying back in high school and got my private pilot's license, Part 61, while I was going to school. And then after that, I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy, did not get in. And right after getting denied, I ran into this KC-10 pilot at an air show and told him my situation. He said, fear not, young one, there's a better way. And he's an American Airlines pilot doing this air show in the KC-10. And he said, hey, I'd do both. I sign up for these cool trips to Hawaii every now and again when I feel like it. And check out your local Guard unit, see if you can become a boom operator. And then that provides a path, if they like you, to offer you a pilot slot once you get your degree done. And so I ended up applying to University of Kansas, and I started out down there going to school, going part-time in the military as aircrew flight equipment before I was a boom. Interviewed to become a boom operator, cross-trained into that. I did my school online is where I ended up finishing, so through deployments and stuff, got my degree done. And then from there, I interviewed with the Kansas Air National Guard in a pilot position, and I was selected. Went to pilot training, and here I am, stuck with the unit.
Stuck.
Yes. I never knew I'd end up living down in Kansas, but I really liked the unit and ended up sticking around.
Okay.
So when you get this pilot slot, then you had to go to training like you had never flown, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I was used to flying Cessnas and Pipers, that sort of thing, and you go to the same Air Force pilot training as any active duty guy. You're training alongside each other. The only difference is at the end, you end up going back to your Guard unit when it's all said and done. So
Yeah, so you're not competing for the slots and the needs of the Air Force. Like you know what you're going to fly. Like it's no mystery, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And so that's kind of the unique position you're in while you're in pilot training is you can help your classmates, and you're not trying to secretly score better than them on academic tests or check rides. you can legitimately help each other and cooperate to graduate, which is good. But yeah, flying the T6 was a little bit different than flying a Cessna and unusual attitude recoveries. I recovered gingerly my first time, and my instructor pilot said, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm going to show you what we're looking for." It was very snappy, pull into the horizon, rolling wings level, not what I was used to.
And so how much of a leg up, because you already had your private at this point, or how many certificates did you have?
I had private and instrument
Okay.
at this point. Yep.
And I mean, when you're interviewing, you said you were a boom operator. Obviously, the fact that you have your pilot certificates, it's got to be helpful. Would you say pretty much anyone interviewing for a pilot slot at the Air National Guard has already got some pilot certificates?
I would say the majority do. However,
Okay.
when we meet people, I just ran into somebody yesterday that was interested. I recommend at least getting through your first solo. So
Okay.
that way you can tell, okay, I can fly an airplane and I'm interested in this and have some skin in the game.
Got it. Okay, let's get back to the aircraft discussion that you mentioned a while ago. So for folks going through the Air Force, they're going. It's very competitive because they're competing for different slots, right? Some people want the fighter, some people want cargo, et cetera, et cetera. You already know because your guard unit operates certain aircraft, right?
That's right.
So when you're sort of early on in the process, if you really, really want to fly a fighter, you can do that in the guard, but not in every location, right? So it kind of takes a little bit of
Correct.
research on your part to figure out what do I want to fly, where do I live.
Exactly.
Talk a little bit about that process. How many different types of airplanes are out there, and sort of what are the opportunities out there that are realistic for folks?
Yeah. So in the Guard, we have everything from KC-135s really all across the country, several C-17 units as well, big ones down in Memphis. We work with those guys a lot. As far as fighters, there's a great unit in New Orleans that one of my good buddies flies for. And then there's F-16s in Miami. That's actually a reserve unit, but there's a Guard unit for F-16s. I believe that's Tulsa, South Dakota, and Wisconsin just converted to F-35s. So when I meet people to, say that I want to go fly fighters, like that's great. If you want to go active duty, cool. But there's other routes if you know where you want to live and not have to move every few years. So, and then California has several units with tankers as well, off the top of my head. And of course, you've got the Phoenix guys flying the 135 as well.
And is there a guard unit in Tucson too with F-16s or no?
Yeah, I believe the Tucson guys are actually the schoolhouse. A lot of the
Mhm.
Guard guys that operate that are actually part of the F-16 schoolhouse, is how I
Oh,
understand
okay.
it.
Okay, so if I'm a little kid right now, my dream is to be a fighter pilot. It sounds like I mean, not easy, but like the Air National Guard would be the way to go. But is it a higher bar? Like, do you have to have more achievements prior to applying than going into the Air Force? Or like, why doesn't everybody just go do the Air National Guard?
I think part of it is because we're just not as well advertised, and people think of the Air Force, the only thing they may know of is active duty. That said, the pilot requirements to get there are essentially the same. Mm, It's just very competitive at the fighter guard units, especially one of my buddies at the New Orleans unit. He had a bunch of applicants, only a few got selected to come down and sort of rush the unit, if you will, where they bring you in and chat with you and get to know you a little bit. And then from there, then they offer even fewer interviews to see who will get selected. So my buddy that's in that unit is very, very book smart and a great stick pilot as well. So it is very competitive at the fighter units, especially.
I'd be interested, like at a super competitive unit like that, how many people were already in the unit as, like you said, like you were a boom operator, we're doing some other enlisted job or whatever at the unit, and then do you think it's like
I can't,
half or less than half, or what do you think?
I can't speak to the fighter units, but for us in the tanker world, probably 3/4 of our pilots were prior maintenance, prior something in the military, crew chiefs. Even some guys were crew chiefs and F-16s or other airframes and come to us. So And I just remembered too, there's a guard component at Whiteman flying the B2 as well, if that's something people are
Oh, wow.
into.
Oh, what's the maximum age to apply for that? Actually, I've heard the stories about flying the B2 for a long time
Yeah,
in the sim. I don't know that that's
about
what I
that
would do. Is there any B1s in the? That's the one I really want to fly. Okay.
I don't remember if it's reserve or guard that has the B1s on a dais.
That would be so
There
cool.
might be some.
All right, we'll have to look that up later. Okay, Ben. So back to your training. You go through pilot training. You already know you're going to be a tanker pilot. So you get flipped upside down in the T6, and then what's next? Like, what's that process look like?
But yeah, so I'll caveat this and say the programs are changing with the T1 going away. But in my case, I was in the T6 for 6 to 9 months or so. And then after that, I knew I was going to be flying heavy, so I went into the T1 track, whereas some of my classmates went to the T38 or helicopters. And so then I flew the T1 for probably another 6 months.
Can you tell our listeners what the civilian version of the T1 is?
Oh yeah, it's the Mighty Beach Jet. Yeah. In fact, I had the opportunity to get typed in it at the end of training, submitting your training records. They have a DPE come in and ask if you want to get the type rating. And I told my classmates that, like, you're idiots if you don't pay this dude a couple $100 to get those.
Yeah.
Not ever knowing I'd use a Beach Jet type rating again, and here I am flying it for my civilian job. So
That's how it goes.
Unbelievable. Max and I are both Beach Jet, former Beach Jet pilots.
alumni, yeah.
So we have
a
nice.
real special place in my heart for the old.
That's right. I think the T1 has single point fuel, doesn't it?
And no TRs.
It
or something?
does.
Yeah.
Does that have
No
TRs?
TRs. No TRs. Single point fuel. Very worn out seats.
What are they replacing that with?
A lot of guys right now are only flying the T6. It's just a longer T6 syllabus. Eventually, it's going to be replaced with the T7, allegedly, but that's had some issues getting actually put into place. So
What's a T7 look like?
it sort of looks like a bigger T38. I think it only has one engine, but it's got 2 intakes. And I
Yeah,
wanna
that's
say they
replacing
can-
the T38 as well, right?
Yeah, and apparently you can make it act more like a fighter or more like a heavy in the air. That's the rumor. Don't know that
Oh,
for
cool.
sure.
So it must have like fly-by-wire or something.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. Yeah, my Google search has died, so I guess we won't be able to see a picture of that yet. 2-seat tandem airplane, I'm guessing.
I believe it is tandem. Yes.
Okay.
No, it's not 2-seat. It's a trainer, but it's a single seat.
Off you go. It's
luck,
all
have
solo
fun.
time. Good luck, boys.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so you finish up the training, and then next do you go to the simulator for the tanker, and then start that, or do you have what else?
Yeah. So after you finish undergraduate pilot training, which is the T6, T1 in my case, you go to your follow-on school, which will be specific to what you're going to be flying back home. And for me, that was in Altus Air Force Base, Oklahoma. And that starts out sort of like doing an initial type rating with academics for a while, then sims, and then you do, I think, 7 or 8 flights in the jet before you go back to your unit. Once you get back to your unit, you have your initial qualification as a co-pilot. You're technically dual-seated qualified, but you're going to primarily fly in the right seat, at least in the tanker, and get really good at running checklists and being a good co-pilot.
It'd be really interesting to see how many gallons of Jet A you burn from 0 to hero, and when you're actually qualified. Like,
How much?
It's gotta
Because it's
be-
all Jet A.
it's got to
yeah.
be substantial.
Yeah. No
Especially
kidding.
in the KC-135, dude. All right, let's go fly some approaches.
Let's do it. Oh man, they were just doing it the other day in Williams Gateway.
I know.
was there.
I know. You
It's
see him
just
flying around. It's
They're just-
hilarious.
oh yeah, doing touch and goes, just like 100.
We've got training requirements we got to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
$100,000
I'm gonna get
hamburger.
that budget cut.
Yeah,
Gotta
Wow.
Use that, gotta use that gas.
that's right. So you get into the right seat of the plane. Now you're fully qualified. I don't want to say active duty because that's the wrong term. When you're fully qualified and you're a member of your guard unit, what is that status called, or kind of where do you get to?
We call it you're finished with mission qualification training, MQT.
Okay.
It's basically what it's called. And then at that point, yeah, you're eligible to be a co-pilot on any of the unit's taskings. So it could be anything from flight overseas, local training flights, And then some units have particular sort of on call to go fly things, which is what I was doing recently out at the base. You can participate in that as well. Mm, And those are just good opportunities to earn some extra money once you're a part timer.
So, like, what are you getting paid when you first get sent to pilot training? Is there like a training pay, and then once you're fully qualified, do you get a raise, or how does that work?
You are going to have to go to officer school before you go to pilot training. So that's something I may have left out, but that's about 6 or 8 weeks down in Maxwell Air Force Base if you're not coming in already commissioned. So then after that point, you'll go to pilot training as a second lieutenant. So it's the first officer rank. And whatever that pay grade is based on your amount of years in service, that's what you'll make during pilot training. So it's a pretty good paycheck while you have nothing to do but focus on flying and exist and show up
And
every
you have
day.
no expenses essentially, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's high stress environment, relatively low stress in the way of life responsibilities
Right.
outside of flying an airplane. You're just immersed completely in a pilot training environment.
And then once you're fully qualified, you're kind of part time. Is there like a monthly guarantee that you're paid, and then you're paid on when you're actually flying a mission? There's some type of hourly, or walk us through what that typically looks like.
Yeah. So the guard is a little bit unique. Every year we're guaranteed our drill pay, of course. So that's 2 days of pay at whatever rank you're at. So I'm a captain. If I go in for drill, just purely as a part-time traditional member, on those 2 days, I'll make whatever that ends up being for about 2 days of my military pay. We're also guaranteed or offered as flying members additional flying training periods. So that's like 16 flying periods per quarter that we can burn. And that's again at your pay grade. And then on top of that, you're offered 2 weeks of annual training orders, which is 2 weeks of your pay. And anything you can sign up for on top of that is just up for grabs, basically, on case by case.
So how much fly? So what? Explain to me like how much you can throttle back and throttle up. If you're when you're qualified, if you're like, hey, I want to be an airline pilot, so I want to fly as much as possible, or if
Yeah.
you are already at an airline and you just kind of want to stay qualified and do the bare minimum, like what does that look like?
So, as a co-pilot, which I still am in tanker, we have more training requirements. And at a minimum, that's going to look like me going out doing one takeoff and landing and an instrument approach every month. So at minimum, I've got to go out there, get in the jet and do those things. And then I've also got quarterly and annual requirements. One of the annual requirements being an oceanic flight. So I have to go do a flight that does all the oceanic stuff once a year. However, once you upgrade to aircraft commander and then instructor pilot, we call them training beans. Your beans go down a little bit, so you don't have to do as much quarterly and yearly activity, for lack of a better term. So in the tanker, some of our extra things are like 3-engine approaches. I know, super scary when we have 3 engines. So we practice those in the airplane, and then precision, non-precision approaches, autopilot off, refueling, and some formation flying as well.
Got
Yep.
it.
So as a corporate guy like me, I obviously have to do my one flight a month minimum out there. I shoot for at least 2 at this point if I can for proficiency. So we talk a lot about being proficient versus just legal to go fly. And then if you're a guy like a new lieutenant trying to build a bunch of flight time, you can pretty much ask the scheduling guys to use you as much as possible so that you're flying all the time out there. Like if I didn't have a civilian job, I could fly the tanker really as much as the scheduler would put me on. And we'll go out with 4 pilots sometimes if we're going out to just do pilot proficiency, and we'll beat the pattern up and do seat swaps and get some good reps in.
So could this
That's
be a full-time gig if you wanted it to be?
Yeah, absolutely. We have positions that are called AGR jobs, active guard reserve, which is you're basically getting paid as an active duty member at your guard unit. And then the term guard bums comes to mind for part-timers who don't have a full-time job, but they pick up all the little trips, the alert pay, which is the on-call stuff, any little opportunity to get paid that they can. So
It's just like the airlines.
I know it is. It's like,
Well, we have a lot of airline guys too.
oh yeah, I bet.
Let's take a time out from our conversation to talk about another friend of ours, Timothy P. Pope, who's a certified financial planner dedicated to guiding professional pilots through smart financial planning. Whether it's saving for retirement, investment management, a seamless military transition, or strategic tax planning, Tim is your trusted financial partner. Join Tim as he leads engaging discussions on personal finance strategies for professional pilots on the Pilot Money Podcast. Timothy P. Pope, helping professional pilots make the most out of life.
So, okay, now how about this? Do the schedulers like publish a schedule for the next month, or how do you know what's available and what's out there, and how do you like plan to like do all that?
Yep. So you submit your monthly availability for the next month. It's I think they want it by the 15th of the month prior, typically. And you'll send in. I can either fly. It's like an Excel spreadsheet, like day, night, or just alert on these days. And you'll send that into the scheduler, and then they send out the weekly flying schedule every Wednesday for us. And that shows what you're going to be doing the next week, and it's on you to go through and check, see if you're on the schedule, and that's about how it goes in a nutshell.
Okay.
But
So,
if I see something on the schedule next week, and I'm like, oh, there's only 2 pilots, and I'm not flying at Veris, I may ask the scheduler, hey, is it okay if I jump on there and get a couple extra landings, and then I'll go over while to pay in, and it's another way to get some more money and more proficiency.
okay. So this job, I mean, I would say your current position flying, it's not like you're on a 2-pilot 1-airplane deal where like if you're gone, like the plane's not going to move. Like you're in a pool of pilots, right? So you can kind of plan around it. But for a full-on corporate pilot that's in a position like Max or I, this would be pretty tough because you've got some requirements. You got to go, and then once you're committed with the guard, and then if your boss calls, like, sorry,
Right.
so it's not for everybody. Obviously, airline it fits in really well because there's trip trade and drop and whatever. There's a lot more
Well, you
flexibility.
have your schedule already.
Yeah, you have
and
your
then just-
schedule. Probably a fractional pilot. I would imagine there's got to be some NetJets and FlexJet pilots that can do it
just
because they
your
have
weeks
more.
off.
Yeah. So it's not a slam dunk for every single professional pilot. There's definitely it's got to fit in with a certain deal. But when you have these longer deployments, right? I mean, there are times when you actually have to like drop everything and go for a while, right? So let's talk
Absolutely.
about that now.
Yeah. So the big overarching theme on that is, and Brooks wanted me to be clear on this. It's just about being transparent and honorable about, having 2 masters, if you will. Like,
Right.
I'm very open with Veris about my expectation as a co-pilot at the Guard, what they asked of me, and then any upcoming deployments or trips, I just try to give that to our Veris scheduling as soon as advanced as I can. So that's how it's worked in my scenario. But of course, at other jobs, you might have to just finesse it a little bit differently.
Right. Okay.
But
Like,
small-
give us an example of like what could you expect probably as a pilot if you're getting deployed? Are we looking at weeks, months? Like, what can people
Yeah.
expect to see?
In the Guard, we try to keep our deployments as aircrew, like, say you have a 60-day tasking for your particular unit. Our leadership works really hard to make it so that we can split it up into 2 30-day blocks. So I have one of those happening next year, and I'm going to split it up and only do half of it. So I'm not gone for the full time, which is kind of nice. And that's
What do
not
the Air
really an
Force
option
guys
if
think
you're in
about
active
that?
duty.
When you
You
guys are
know-
there and you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm only here for a couple weeks, yeah, and they're
It's,
like, I've been here for 6 months.
Unfortunately, I've ran into a lot of guys, especially when I was a boom operator, that were super burnt out. It makes you feel bad for them. It definitely does. Because there's a bunch of good dudes that probably would have stuck in if they didn't have to be gone all the time. So
Got it. And would you say you're looking at one a year?
currently, with the way things are going in the world, it's probably even less than that. We've known this one's on the schedule for probably a couple years now, just because they prod things out so far and let you know when your unit's going to be covering things. But of course, that said, when weird things happen in the world, they may gather a group of you to go sooner than later.
So I have a question. Like from the 30,000 of you, what is the point of the Air National Guard versus the Air Force Reserves? Like,
So the
why are there two?
reserves, yeah. So the reserves are a national entity, and then the Guard, we are a state-funded entity. So that's the biggest difference between the two of us. Is the reserves are more like a part-time active duty is the way I think of it, and the Guard is a state entity that can be activated to be with the active duty as well. That may not be the best description, but
No, it's kind of crazy. Like, you can understand the different parts of the National Guard that would benefit the state if they needed help in some regard. But like a KC-135 for the state of Kansas, like what does the state of Kansas need KC-135s for? You know what I mean? Like, how do they fund that? Like, what is just like, yeah, we're just pitching in.
yeah, that's it's probably above my patronage to the actual like tactical.
Listen, can you get the commander on the phone?
Can you
We really need to
justify
get
this?
to the
Yeah,
bottom
come
of
on,
this
Ben.
because
Come on.
But like what's nice about being in the middle of the country is there's plenty of aircraft that need gas, and for us that means more opportunities to make money because they need us to be places. So it's a pretty good place to be. In the tanker.
I was like a separate tanker question I have, and this might sound really dumb, so just correct me if I'm wrong. But like, if I'm a fighter unit in one of the branches of the military and I'm doing a cross country flight, I've heard like they have to like call a tanker unit and be like, "Hey, are you guys free to like fuel us up or meet us here?" Or like, how does that work? And who are do you only refuel other Guard units? So like, just talk a little bit about like how that whole thing
pays
works.
for the gas?
Yeah, like I'm just curious.
So all that is pre-scheduled through our schedulers. And so, for example, I worked in scheduling after I was a new lieutenant, and you get calls from everybody doing those cross-country flights. I had to say no to the Blue Angels commander
Ooh.
one time because he wanted a tanker. We were already tasked that day. So we do a lot of training missions with B-52s, C-17s, but then like if the Thunderbirds need to go across the country for an air show, they can call us and book us as well. And we'll help out with that, or any other fighter unit. We're also capable of refueling Navy airplanes. We just have to put the drogue on the back of the boom on the ground before we take off.
That seems like the move to get a job at the Guard unit in the scheduling department first, and like make everybody get friends and like you.
No, exactly.
And then you're like, oh, hey, it's me. I'm back. Remember me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So no weekends, right? You remember I'm very busy on Saturdays and Sundays, and I don't like to get up too early. So
That's right. And it's one of those jobs that if you do perfectly well, you never hear any praise. But as soon as you send the tanker to the wrong mode one time, it's no bueno. I can't say I've ever done that. But you asked about if a fighter's in the air and we're out flying around and they're like, hey, can we get gas? We can't do that, like ad hoc refueling stuff. They have to schedule it prior, unless it's like a fuel emergency or something, or they're about to flame out. Then, of course, we'll go give them whatever they need. So,
got it. Interesting. This is a total off the cuff question. I don't know if you'd have any idea. Are there always tankers in the air at every time of the day? Would you say, is there usually one airborne somewhere? Do you know?
I mean, just based on the vastness of the fleet and how many there
Yeah.
are, I'd say, yeah, most of the time there's one flying around somewhere
yeah.
doing something. Yeah, we're
Okay.
pretty busy.
And you mentioned the alert status. And so that's essentially like being on reserve at the airline. Like if something happens, you're the first person they would call. And so there's always a few pilots on alert that are ready to go.
Exactly. Yeah. So several different units have different customers, if you will. But again, being in the middle of the country gives us opportunities to provide for customers. And that equates to multiple air crews being on alert at the same time. And I mean, if you're at a job where you can know your days off and just bid alert on your days off, you can really do well for yourself. So
Do you have to be within a certain distance? Are you like on the base?
So For some of ours, we are, and we have made it a good enough deal to where we really only have to be on the base for 10 days out of the month in 5-day blocks. So you get full pay for the month, but we've broken it down to where we all take turns covering it. So
Good deal.
that's just one example of some of them. And then some other units have alert missions where you can even be home. When you're on alert, you're just home and not drinking and able to get to the base in X amount of time. And that's another great opportunity.
Is the commitment after getting your wings, is it the same as the Air Force or anywhere else?
Yeah, it's a 10-year after you get your wings.
Okay. So the cool part about listening to this and thinking about it, it seems like if my kid was like, hey,
Yeah, this was
I
my
wanna
next
fly.
question.
So
Yeah.
you say, okay, the National Guard is a great deal. And it's a great deal for a couple of reasons. One, because you can apply for what you want to fly. And so and
If you're
two,
willing to be
well, yeah,
flexible on
to
location.
go where you're going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but so the cool thing about it is that you can go, you go to training, you come back, and then you can fly and get like your first jet experience, perhaps, right? And then you can, when you're ready to get another job, you can just then go get a job and then like kind of scale back your flying over there. And then if you the economy takes a downturn and you get furloughed, you're like, oh, I'm back at the Guard, back on the schedule. And because
Yeah,
I've heard
and-
people doing that. They're like, I just went, so it's a pretty awesome gig, dude, really. Because the 10 years,
100%.
like if you're active duty, it's 10 years,
Yeah.
of your life full time. No joke, right? And where it's like, it's 10 years, but you
You have a toe in the water instead of
you can
fully.
go tow, or you might jump
Yeah.
in and then you
Yeah.
might jump back out.
Yeah.
It's dry off for a few years.
This is it. I mean, we always say flexibility is the key to air power. This sounds like the king of flexibility.
yeah, this is the
Absolutely.
deal.
So
What did
knowing
we-
what you know now, Ben.
Where did we go wrong?
Yeah, no kidding. Where were you 20 years ago, Ben?
Yeah.
Come on. Okay, so knowing what you know now, Ben, Max and I both have kids that are coming up. Maybe they want to be pilots. What would you say? I mean, is the path you took probably the most efficient and kind of the best setup? Where you're sort of like you've got a couple of credentials already. You're getting involved. You're volunteering at a younger age. For folks that can't see on video, I would imagine you're just a little bit out of college, maybe in your 20s. Like, is that the right time to get plugged in, or do people find more success if they're getting plugged in later? Or like, how would you design that from scratch?
I would say if it's someone who knows they want to fly from a young age, that was the case for me. I just didn't know exactly what the end goal would be. So I knew I wanted to start flying whenever it was as soon as possible. So that was why the flying for my private pilot's license in high school. And kind of from a young age, I was about 6 when 9/11 happened. So I knew I wanted to go into the military. And that's the two of those things sort of came together, and that's what ended up being good for me. But to answer your question, yes, I think that if you want to have a part-time flying job with lots of good benefits, going to get your private and going to whatever college you want, that's another nice benefit.
Yeah.
Officer school after that, into the Guard, now you're flying, you have your commercial multi straight out of training. Yeah, it can be really great for a lot of people.
What would you say, from when you started officer school through all of pilot training, how long did that take? Like, what do you got to block out? A year, 2 years?
About 2
What are we
years.
thinking? 2 years. Okay.
I'd say 2 years is about average. Yeah,
I mean, so
that's about.
you get your private in college, graduate, then in college you do the part-time. Is that really, I mean, is that pretty tough to balance part-time to be in the Guard, like what you were doing, boom operator plus college? That seems like a lot.
It was for me, especially at the time with the Middle East deployments. It was I was going quite a bit, doing a lot of CLEPing and online courses for that. But
Yeah.
even if you don't want to be enlisted aircrew beforehand, just being in the unit gives you a good leg up and gets you some military experience. And a lot of people that are in college can actually just do the one weekend a month thing and still get a good portion of their tuition covered. So another good way
Really?
to
Wait.
Oh,
so hold
that
on.
we didn't even talk
There's
about
a
that.
tuition arm of this whole setup.
be. Yes.
Go on.
Yeah. At the time, I think my tuition assistance from the state of Kansas varied between 80 and 100%. So
To do a part-time job.
yes.
Okay, so hold on. So maybe you get your
Are we
pilot's
going to the guard tomorrow or the
Hold
next
on.
day with our
Yeah,
kids?
well, our kids. So okay, what about this? So you get your private pilot's license in high school. You finish high school, you enroll at the guard doing, a lower level job. You work there for a year, then you start going to college. Then you somehow become a boom operator or a scheduler or something where you're networking with the pilots all through college. After college, while it's getting paid for, a percentage of it is getting paid for, then you start to apply for the flight stuff. Maybe that's the way.
Well, dude, it seems like, okay, there's two. You can be aircrew, which
Yeah.
means then you're deployable. Or you could be a scheduler. Is that a non-deployable position?
Most of the schedulers are either pilots or boom operators. So they're still
Oh, it's an
deployable.
extra gig.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
I was gonna say it all goes back to the scheduler because then you
Yeah.
talking to all the guys and you're like, hey, yeah. No, I'll take you off of the flight schedule for this day, so
We've
you
got
can
this.
go to the college football game. But remember,
work
when
this.
my application comes up, and you
Yep.
can start building
That's
favors.
Yeah, that's
like,
right. Exactly.
gotta
Yeah,
work
are there jobs in the guard where you can't that you would not be getting deployed on, where you could realistically work as a college student and where you're not going to get shipped off?
I would say yes. There are some jobs that aren't going to be on the road as much as
Yeah.
aircrew for sure.
Yeah.
We still bring some crew chiefs with us on
Yeah.
trips usually, but some of the other maintenance career fields, finance, things in the support group, they're not going to typically deploy like we do. And even right now, it's not that frequent.
I
So,
bet you could figure it
A lot
out.
of
I'm sure you could figure it out.
yeah.
Which what you were saying before is if you're just honest and with the unit, be like, hey, I want to go through college, but I want to work here at the same time. So what would be the best fit for that?
And the cool thing about college too is you could always take a semester off.
Yes.
One semester, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's
right,
not like
or
it's a
the
job where
summer or
you've got to be
whatever,
there
yeah.
every day, or do it in the summer. Yeah. Interesting. Wow. We got to rethink everything here, Max. What is now? Okay. Now, is there an age limit to get started? Maybe for flying, I would imagine there probably is.
There is, and it's somewhere around entering pilot training at 32. Don't quote me on that. But if you have an exceptional candidate, it's possible to work on exception to policy waiver as well. So
And-
if someone's at the end of that zone and the unit really wants
how
them,
long
then
can you
it's
stay
possible.
for? I mean, because
I mean, we've got people that are staying their full 20. Others, they were at Delta before they got hired at the Guard, and they do their 10 and they want to peace out, and that's great. So it's just kind of up to you.
I heard a friend of a friend who did all of his flight training, then got a guard slot, got hired at Delta, went through training, never touched a real airplane, pieced out, and went to the guard, started at UPT, and did the whole shebang, and has been accruing seniority for the last 2 years while
Yeah, I've heard
flying at the
stories like
guard.
that. Yeah.
it's like
Well done, sir.
Yeah.
Well, but
Or ma'am.
there's a cost to that though too, because you paid for all of your flight
Yes.
training that you
Yeah,
didn't have to. Like, I mean, there's, and I'm not sure if you
There's
go
a
on
cost with everything.
full leave like that, if you actually accrue seniority for pay. A lot of times you'll accrue seniority for bidding, but not for pay. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. There's a million different ways to work this. I can already tell we're going to get 10 emails.
Oh, this is such an airline pilot thing,
This
though,
is-
dude, because
we're
there's
gonna
so
get
many angles.
so many
That's why
emails
the
from guys.
already
that are
turned in my head.
yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. So
Guys are going to be going, oh, I did this, and this
but
is
that's
the
the thing.
actually
It's like
ultimate.
it's like a fraternity for every
Yeah.
unit. Like the rules aren't all exactly the same.
That
and
was
everyone's
my
got
next
their own
question.
Program.
So, is this is kind of, is it administered by the state? So, for example, is the Kansas Air National Guard going to have different rules because, and then the Oregon Air National Guard because of the state is involved, or is it more up to the commanders at the, do you know anything about how that works?
Yeah. So the short story of that is that we report to the governor ultimately as the Guard unit. Typically, most of our taskings are a national tasking, if you will. So like for a deployment, you're going to be what's called a Title 10 status. And at that
Yeah.
point, if you get in trouble, you're held to the same standard as an active duty guy next to you, and you're reporting up that chain of command. You basically get to become one of them while you're on a Title 10 is what it's called status.
So, say you're in an A10 guard unit, right? Does that exist? Isn't there one of those in Tucson? Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, let's just
I
pretend
believe
there
so,
is.
yeah.
And the governor is like, "Listen, the cartel is all coming towards the border. I'm ordering you to go down and defend our state border with it." Is that, if you report to the governor, is that a thing?
I can't say for certain. It seems like it could be possible,
Interesting.
but I'm sure there'd have to be some other entities involved before they just go sending A10s to the border.
Well, let's see here, Max. You
It
could
just
be
seems crazy that like the same planes that the Air Force flies, but the
the governor
report
gets to
the
control.
governor.
Right. You could go join the 190th Skullbangers in Idaho. That would be technically the Canadian
This is
border.
a fraternity, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. Is there hazing involved when you get back
I
from
can't-
training?
I can't answer
It
that.
totally is. This is
I haven't
is
had a glass of
unbelievable.
water in a while, so I'm
This is
gonna
I love it. I love it.
this
Yeah,
is an airplane fraternity.
this is
This
amazing.
is the coolest thing. And they pay for, but you don't pay them when you're in college. They pay for you to go to
Yeah,
college.
this is amazing.
I
Yeah,
will say
'cause-
some of my best friends are other guard boom
Yeah.
operators and pilots. I mean,
Other brothers
and
from the
because
guard.
yeah, and so like you're not moving every few years, so you and your buddies get to stick around together and fly airplanes together, and
yeah.
and we tend to hang out with each other quite a bit outside of work too.
Let's take a quick time out from our conversation with Ben to talk about our favorite product of 2025, and that is Amigo Aerotows T1. If you listen to our recent conversation with them, you know it has changed Max's life at the airport. No longer is he struggling to push that 2,000-pound airplane in and out of the hangar. Simply hooks up the T1 now and effortlessly moves that airplane back and forth. If you want to get more information, check out the link in the show notes for Aerotows websites. They have a tow that'll accommodate up to 15,000 pounds. And they've got a special offer for our listeners. Use checkout code 21FIVE to get $100 off any product. Scroll down on your podcast app to find the link to Aerotow and check out all of the products they have for pilots. Okay, back to the show. One other
Secret
question
handshake,
for you,
whole
Ben.
thing.
Because there are so many airline pilots commuting, does that work? Like, are there guys in your group that don't even live in Kansas? How does that work?
I've seen it. I've seen it a couple ways. I've seen where we have guys that will live in Atlanta and fly for an airline there full time, and then they'll commute in to drill. And then there's guys that live in Kansas City that are Atlanta based, and it's what I've heard. It's a pretty easy commute to go down there and fly, or Chicago or Dallas or wherever
Right.
you're at.
So can you stay on the base then if you don't live locally?
You cannot. Yeah, a guard unit like us, we don't have any on
No
base
visiting officer
housing
quarters or anything? Okay.
other than our alert shack. That's about it.
Interesting. Okay. Okay, and then you mentioned the 20 years, and that's kind of the maximum that you can serve. Are there any?
No, that's just to get retirement, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's what I was going to say. What are the incentives to keep you in, and the benefits kind of after service? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the only retirement system that was around when I first joined was what's now called the legacy one. And for that, you have to stay in a full 20 to get your retirement benefit. And based on how many points you've accrued, that determines how many or what your monthly pay is going to be in retirement. So the more you're out there, the more points you earn on deployments, trips, activities. And that's what your stipend would be based on in retirement. However, in the last, 5 years or something, they came out with a new system that they call the blended retirement. And at that point, you don't have to stay a full 20. You will get a match into your thrift savings plan, which is like a 401k. And you can still get out before 20, have something to take with you because they'll be matching your TSP while you're in. So it's a little bit different. I don't know if the legacy system is still available. I think everybody's automatically into the blended at this point. So I'm still a
Got it.
legacy guy though.
Okay. And then access to veteran healthcare, that kind of stuff, VA hospital, all sort of the traditional benefits that you would think of. GI Bill, potentially?
Yes, the GI Bill. Yep. So the post 9/11 GI Bill, I actually used it to cover my ATT CTP. So there's all sorts of ways you can use that. And then there's state GI Bills as well that you can use for college. So there's all sorts of
Of course there is.
good, yeah, good benefits there.
Wow.
And you can pass them along to your kids too if you
Okay.
end up not using it.
We're working on trying to find a downside here. And let me ask you this. You run into an Air Force guy, maybe at the local watering hole. Is there a little bit of competition? Do you get the same amount of respect? What's the vibe when you're around other service members?
It sort of depends on the person that you run into, but a lot of the active duty pilots, when they find out you're guard, you'll probably get an eye roll at you out of jealousy, most likely.
Jealous. Okay.
And then, but a lot of them really are cool dudes, and you can chat them up. And I met some first assignment instructor pilots at the air show we had, and was chatting them up a couple months ago, and told them about the guard a little bit. It was good. Good interaction.
Good for you. Yeah, good for you. It made you feel good. I get it.
So what is it like to deploy for more than 30 days?
Wow. Yeah. Because I've got a test at the end of the month, and my professor, he's very. Wow. Okay. So little healthy competition. It's funny because we asked a similar question. Remember when we talked to the Coast Guard guy?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what happens when you guys? And he's like, they just they kind of get an eye roll. You're like, all right.
It's because they're their own fraternity. Dude.
Exactly. It's just a
you
different
can't
deal.
mix Sigma Chi and Data Guy in the same
exactly.
bar. It just doesn't work like that.
That's right.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. I don't know. I feel like we didn't do a good job of organizing. I feel like we just kind of assaulted Ben with questions from
because
every angle, but
it's a new surprise around every corner.
I know. I just keep getting my mind blown. Okay, Ben, I have a very serious, very important question.
Everybody that's in the Air Force Academy right now.
Yeah. Just trying to transfer.
Wait, this guy had a good time in college?
What?
And
was still paid for?
And I'm going to see him in pilot training?
But yes.
What is the most egregious movie depiction of an in-air refueling with a tanker? My son and I just watched
I know exactly.
Air Force One about
That's what
2
I was
or 3
gonna
nights
say.
ago. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
that one's
because I
pretty
watched
egregious.
that.
Doesn't it blow up in that? Like
Yeah.
Yep,
I was and I was like, I told him, I said, I'm going to talk to a guy that used to operate the boom and flies that plane. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure this was like, it's got to be on the wall of shame for you guys, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just pretty far from realistic. That's all.
Is it hard to fly the boom?
It's not overly difficult. When it becomes difficult, is sometimes you'll get an airplane that is rigged a little bit off, especially when we were deploying and the airplanes are getting used all the time.
That
Sometimes
sounds
the
code
rigging-
for not a very good pilot.
But like, at least I was a boom. I'm thinking of an F-16 coming in, and you're trying to, his receptacle is right behind the pilot, so you're trying to keep it out of the way of the cockpit as he's coming in. And sometimes, as you're moving the stick, the boom would sort of jump more than what you put in for input. Nothing.
What if you
too
whack
bad.
the canopy? Like
That receiver
pretty
pilot's
bad,
gonna
right?
have a bad day. Yeah, gonna be a bad time.
Okay. Rank the from hardest to easiest aircraft to refuel. Give it a start.
like as a boom operator?
Yeah, as a boom operator, like what is the most challenging and then maybe the easiest?
I would say the more challenging ones are going to be the C-17 and the E-4. The C-17 pushes up a bow wave, and they're such a nimble aircraft, so they've got such a big influence on us with how much air they're pushing up over the top of them. And because they're fly-by-wire and all that, they can nimbly push all that stuff around. And then the E-4, its receptacle is, it's a 747. It's in front of the pilots, and it's on this weird little hump thing.
Oh, we
And,
know. We just watched Air Force One. We know exactly where it is.
Yeah, exactly. So it creates some kind of weird little slipstream that will scoot the boom off to one side or the other if you don't actively push through it. It's kind of some weird anomaly. But that's what I remember from the boom days.
Okay. And easier airplanes would be what? Slower move. In general, the slower the
Well, the
airplane.
drogue ones, like the Navy ones, you don't have to do anything, right? You just stick it out there, and they got to come get it.
You do, yeah, but those are kind of difficult too because if they get erratic, you have to fight the instinct to move the boom around so it doesn't whip that basket around and hit them. So you just have to hold it as still as you can. So I'd say the easier ones would be like F-16s. You're at a higher airspeed and have more response from the boom.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, some of the harder ones can be like the slower airspeed, like A-10s, C-130s, at a lower airspeed, so you're having to maintain a lot more pressure on the stick to hold it there while
Got
they're
it.
coming in.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. What is it called when you like? I'm not going to use the right word. When you connect right away, like it's just like a slam dunk. Like, do you guys have a term for that where it's like, oh, I got it on the first swing? I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Kids' questions?
Yeah,
Or is this your question?
These are my
Because
questions.
I'm pretty sure this is.
There's
Yeah,
got to
so
be
it's,
one.
you know, it's called just nice contact. Like if I was with another boom operator and I'm watching back there and they just plugged it straight in, nice
I know.
contact, man.
That's what he's
Whereas-
going to say to his wife tonight. Nice contact.
Nice contact. That was good. Well, I figured there had to be something as a like, I had to do a four-wheeler or something.
Yeah, that's-
I don't know.
A four-wheeler?
I'm just saying, like, there's got to
Ace in
be.
the hole?
Yeah, something.
One
yeah,
shot, one kill?
Yeah, exactly. I figured there was something. Listen.
Bro's
I'm
been
sorry it
watching
was
too many
anticlimactic
I know.
for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry it was anticlimactic.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Interesting.
Nice contact.
Yeah. Interesting.
Just,
Yeah.
I said we're a little unscripted today. We're going off the cuff, Max.
That's okay.
Any other incredible benefits you'd like to reveal to us secretly, Ben, that we forgot to ask, or that you're just holding
sort of
under
like
your
some
hat?
Sort of
or
like free beer for life.
Yeah,
that you tell us, or-
exactly.
I mean, you get some tax-free shopping perks and stuff.
The PX.
Pretty much
Okay.
anything. Yeah, any other benefit that you get with a military ID, we get. But one of the other things that I'll say the Guard keeps you away from, and love to all the FAPEs that are out there, first assignment instructor pilots. It's becoming one of those. What that is you finish pilot training, you're an active duty guy, and if the instructors there think you're a decent dude and decent pilot, they'll keep you around for 4 more years as a first assignment instructor pilot. So, several of my buddies became FAPEs, and that's you graduate pilot training and you go straight to instructor school to instruct in the T6, and you're fine with students
What?
about your you're fine with
So that sounds like you're
students
in
for
the
4
Air
more
Force.
years.
So it's like a penalty
I mean,
in a way.
So-
I guess it depends on what you
And
think.
you have the governor intervene?
Yeah.
On your behalf?
no, that's the thing. As a Guard guy, you're protected from that. Like it
That's
was
what he's saying.
impossible for me.
Oh! I was like, I thought you said people were getting picked for that. I was like,
No,
sounds
that's
like,
the active.
there's got to be
The
some
Guard-
fine print somewhere in the
Yes,
fraternity
the Guard
paperwork.
protects you from that. So if you're a cool
Oh.
dude and a decent pilot, you're eligible to get, as we call it, FAPed. So that's another
Wow.
that's the other perk of the Guard. Yes.
4 years. So does that add to your commitment, or it's just that of your 10-year, the 4 of it is okay?
Right. So it's like
Wow.
instead of going to fly an F-16, you're going to fly a
Right.
T6 or a T-38
Right.
for 4 more years instructing.
Can you imagine if we did that on the one in the part 141 side? Sorry, I know you want to go to the regionals, but it's another 4 years here for you.
Sorry.
in this
Not your
Seminole.
lucky day. What?
Yeah.
So with like the amount of military we have deployed overseas and stuff like that, is there a scenario where there's just like not enough flying? Like somebody that's like, okay, I'm gonna do the Guard full time, build time, and then like there's like, yeah, sorry, we can't fly you more than once a week or whatever.
Yeah, sometimes I'm sure that was the case probably during COVID for sure. But a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
it depends on what your unit picks up for off-station trips too. So we have an office in the squadron that they attend conferences to see what basically the active duty wants for support from the Guard and what's available. And sometimes it's Germany trips or Australia, or and sometimes it's stateside things that need assistance too, like weekend-long training exercises.
Are there any UAV guard units, like flying the Predator and stuff?
I don't know. Not sure on UAV stuff.
All right. What else?
have to
That
look
would
at-
be like the ultimate cheat there. If you had like the UAV where you're just like, you're not even having to deploy because you're just like in.
You just
going-
in a trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will
I don't
say
know,
though,
though,
like I was gonna say, one of the more difficult things that I had thought about is the guard is great. I love flying the tanker. It is pretty difficult to stay good at 3 airplanes like that.
Oh, I bet.
To stay sharp, systems knowledge wise, in the tanker, the Challenger, and the Beast Jet is a task, and that is. I'll get back in the tanker after not flying it for a while. Come in to land in a crosswind or something. It's just not pretty.
I don't fly. See, I fly 2 different jets and then smaller planes, so that doesn't really count. But
There you go.
the thing, no. Like the flying part of it is, it's harder to like the FMS. You're like, oh, do you put F 370
Yes.
or do you have to put FL 370? Like you have to, like, I know FL only works in one airplane and F works in the other airplane. And honestly, I can't even tell you which one is which because now I only use FL. Like that's an example of trying to standardize between the two, or like, what freaking, systems knowledge of this or that, and like certain things like that. I think that is harder for me sometimes, but it's one of those things that's getting easier with time because it was a new airplane, and then over time now it's like I kind of have it segregated, figured out.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot. 3 airplanes has got to be the max.
Yeah, but 3, that's
aggressive. That is a lot.
You're a real overachiever.
Yeah,
Ben.
Ben. You've got a
Yeah,
lot
thank you,
going
thank
on.
you.
Lot.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, I love the challenge, so that's good.
What any parting advice to any listeners that are thinking this could be a good option? Any thoughts you want to leave them with before we go?
Yeah, I would say if you have a particular interest in any one airframe, go out to that unit or find somebody that flies them and pick their brain, because you don't know what you don't know. And I thought I wanted to fly C-17s all through high school, basically. After I talked up tanker dudes, C-17 guys, kind of got a feel for what it was going to be like. That was really helpful.
And is the best way to start doing that networking and research? I mean, did you search on LinkedIn, or like how do you even find a guard pilot to start that process if you're not really familiar with how the military works?
Yeah, I would start with seeing where the nearest guard unit is to you, and then there's all sorts of groups on social media, the pilot network. You could even throw a post up on the pilot network and be like, hey, I'm a high school student. I'm interested in flying for the guard. And, usually pilots are pretty happy to help other people that are interested in the career field. And one of us will jump in there and give our 2 cents. And say, hey, call me and let's have a talk.
Oh, that's awesome. Very good. The brotherhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Anything else, Max?
I don't think so.
Your
man.
mind
I
is
think we
thoroughly
beat 'em
blown.
up enough.
We need a time machine. We need to go back in time. 20
It's too late
years.
for us,
I know.
but maybe for the next generation.
Absolutely. I just can't wait for the emails we're going to get from some of these guys. Oh, how hard they work the system, and what a great gravy deal it is. Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Thank you for
absolutely,
writing
guys.
in. It's been awesome to learn more about this. I'm excited. And this is good. All right,
Really
Max.
fascinating.
Yes. All right.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.